Well, thank you for joining and listening to this industry insight on the Small Shipyard Grant for supporting the acquisition of equipment and other technologies funded by the MARAD grant. I'm pleased to be joined with Mr. Dave Matsuda of Matsuda and Associates. I'm Brian Kennemer with Blast One out of Columbus, Ohio. We build, amongst other things, industrial blasting and painting systems for small shipyards, large shipyards, manufacturing, any type of industry that uses large volumes of surface preparation and coating. I'm the director of our client partnerships group, and pleased to, as I say, be joined by Dave Matsuda. Dave, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your company to our listeners, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Brian. Dave Matsuda, Matsuda and Associates. We're a small consulting firm. We do grant writing and other kind of advocacy work on behalf of our clients. I had the honor of running the Maritime Administration, serving there for 4 years, and just a broad background in the federal government. So this is something I've been real excited to work in, and that's helping manage a coalition called the Small Shipyard Grant Coalition. And it's really just designed to help these companies, promote this grant opportunity for them, and see if we can't help them modernize the facilities and equipment.
That's good. Yeah, Blast One's very pleased to be part of that Small Shipyards Coalition, and I think it's yielded a lot of benefit for all parties involved. So thank you. Well, let's get right into it. The purpose of this discussion today was really to talk about this grant as it applies to small shipyards, and just to cover 5 basic things about it. Those of you listening that are very familiar with it, you'll find some of it elementary, but maybe you'll be able to glean a few things that may be helpful to you. So the first thing is, Dave, what is this grant? We loosely call it the MARAD grant for small shipyards, but what's MARAD and what's this grant? And just give us a real, you might say, elementary overview on what it is.
Sure. Well, the Maritime Administration, informally known as MARAD, is a federal agency designed to help promote the maritime industry, the commercial maritime industry. And in the US, it's particularly important for making sure that we can continue to have a merchant marine and haul cargo when we need to for both the federal government, the military, and other purposes. So an important part of this capability is our shipyard base. And this is a program that focuses on the smaller shipyards that oftentimes get overlooked when it comes to making sure we have this industrial capability and that we have the people and the skills required to help maintain our fleets.
Oh, very good. That's a helpful overview. So first thing is, on this grant specifically, Dave, who is eligible for this? What is required for eligibility to be able to get this grant funding?
Sure. Well, this is the program is the best deal in federal government, I believe, for small shipyards, and that's because there's not a lot of other things out there for you. It's one of the few programs in government where a small privately operated shipyard can apply directly for a federal grant. And the way it works is you can apply for the grant for equipment, new US built equipment to help modernize your operation. You can also use the funding for training for workers. But this is it's a neat program like this. You don't have to work through a public agency, a municipality. You don't have to have a long reporting tail for 5 years, on what you did with the money. It's essentially you spend it, you get reimbursed, and that's that. So long as you follow the grant rules, you're in good shape.
That's good. So just on the eligibility piece, it's small shipyards. What defines small, and what other stipulations might be required?
Good question. So functionally, I think most every commercial shipyard in the US is eligible, as long as you have been less than or fewer than 1,200 production employees at one site.
Okay.
You apply per site. So even if you're a company that has several sites, that's where your count is measured. And so long as you're working on work boats over 40 feet in length, or yachts, or recreational boats over 100 feet in length, then you're the type of facility that would be eligible for this program.
Good. So just to recap, if I've got less than 1,200 production employees at one location, so it doesn't mean that I have to have less than 1,200 people total in my entire business. It's at one location. And if I'm working on workboats less than 40 feet in length, or yachts or pleasure craft 100 feet or length in over, I'd probably be eligible for it.
That's right. That's right. Greater than 40 feet or greater than 100 feet for the recreational boats. But new build, new construction work, or repairs, that's what this program's looking for when it comes to eligibility.
Okay, that's very helpful. Let's just talk for a little bit on the types of projects that this funds, because if I understand it correctly, you can't just use this money for anything and everything that you'd like to. So walk us through maybe a couple of case studies on projects, Dave, that Blast One and Matsuda and Associates maybe have worked together on, or other types of projects that have been successful in applying for this.
Sure. Well, basically, it's equipment, capital equipment. The program does not fund buildings per se, but they look at things like blast and paint booths as equipment. So, we've had the fortune to work on some of these projects, successful applications involving blast and paint equipment, like one we worked with in the state of Hawaii. That was an excellent application for this kind of a project. You could also apply for shop equipment, haul out equipment, but anything that is part of the production of the work you do, whether it's, like I said, new construction or repair.
Okay.
But there is definitely an emphasis of late on projects that promotes environmental sustainability. So I could see that, if you're right now out there, blasting in the open, or maybe, tarping up for these kinds of things, then you could, that's a pretty strong case to me anyway, of the environmental benefits of having a dedicated blast and paint booth.
Yeah, very good. You mentioned that one in Hawaii. There's been several others, around in many states, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a coastal state. There's inland waterways that this is applicable to, and certainly there's been successful grant applications there. So, that's very helpful. Now, tell us a little bit about the process for applying for this grant. What does that look like, and how does somebody like you, Dave, and your organization support and help people be successful with it?
Well, what we've learned is that it pays to start early. The timing for this opportunity it's a little unusual. I guess the good thing is it's a little predictable. So the timing is teed off of Congress's budget cycle. So as soon as Congress passes a budget for MARAD for the whole year and provides them the money for this program, then it kicks off a window of 15 days while the agency prepares and gets published its grant notice. So it lays out all the specifics of what they're looking for in the application. And having done this, many years in a row, we can see some of the differences year to year on the grant notice. And by and large, it doesn't change a whole lot. So you could really get ahead of the game by looking at the previous year's grant notice and getting started pulling together information for your application. But once that grant notice is published, there's only about 6 weeks before the application is due. So that's what I say. It really helps to start early and get in front of the process. The other thing that you could do is work with a grant writer, a professional who has done this before and is familiar with the kinds of projects that you're trying to get funded. One thing about this grant program is that it requires a quantitative analysis on the efficiency benefits for the project you're looking to fund. And that's It's a little unusual for federal grants.
Okay.
A lot of them have like a cost benefit analysis or some other kind of uh, benefit, some kind of benefit analysis. But in this case, it's slightly different because what they're looking for, they don't really give a whole lot of information about in the grant notice. But they're looking for ways in which the project makes your operation more efficient and can help you save time or money or other efficiencies like that.
Okay, good. So it comes back to when Congress passes the budget for MARAD. And once they pass that budget and we find that they did in fact fund the grant, then we've got a relatively short window of time to take advantage of that before the applications are due. So you mentioned the 15 days and then the 6 weeks. Would you mind just going over those two numbers again and helping me understand what those are?
Right. So when Congress passes a budget, then 15 days until the grant notice comes out, or usually around 15 days,
Okay.
and then about 6 weeks before the grant application is due. So by the time you wait to see the grant notice, it gets published, or it's you read about it in the trade papers. Oh, this grant's available. The clock's already ticking, and that's why we suggest don't wait. If you are going to write an application in-house yourself, it can take a lot of time, and especially for folks who have a day job or or part of the management team or part of the grant or finance team, setting aside a number of hours to do this is, especially for the first time, it can be daunting. So I do recommend at least consulting or talking to a grant writer and maybe getting some advice and think about whether it makes sense for you to work with them. But we're always happy to, give us a call. We could, if we're not available, recommend somebody who is.
Okay.
We have seen a lot of applications that were done by kind of a generalist grant writer. And, there's folks in your local area, I'm sure, that can write a grant and have done many of them. But this program is it's different. I've seen a lot of applications that, if it were for any other program, I would say, oh, this is pretty well done. But familiarity with the small shipyard grant program really does help when you're looking for a grant writer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your point about the timeline is if you wait until finding out that the grant has actually been funded to decide whether or not you want to pursue a project, you're probably too late. Pulling up, a project of this scale together, if it's of any magnitude whatsoever, is going to take longer than 6 weeks. So if it's something you're interested in, we just encourage our listeners to be talking about it early, definitely probably the beginning of the fourth quarter of the previous year, to start thinking about if this is a path that we want to pursue and start looking at that. So that's helpful. Your comments about using a grant writer, especially someone like Matsuda Associates, to help you write them is good. I mean, I could tell you from our experience as an equipment partner and being fairly experienced in the shipyard industry around the world, we've worked with partners that have not used grant writers, that have frankly they've failed. So I'm not saying that's 100% of the case 100% of the time, but it is certainly something that we have seen, and we've been very pleased with how things have gone working with your firm and others. So that's very helpful. Let's talk about the timeline. So we've spoken a little bit about the upfront. If this 6-week window comes, we get our application in, what do we expect from there from a timeline perspective, Dave?
After the grants are in, then it's 60 days later, the agency will announce the winners. And once you've, they will typically send within a few days a grant agreement for the winners. And as soon as you sign that grant agreement, you can start placing orders, issuing purchase orders, and moving forward with your project. And then it will be eligible to be reimbursed. So if you wanted to look out ahead, I would say, for generally speaking, you look at projects for which you need to order or issue a PO that summer, and then say, okay, those are the kinds of ones that if I needed it before that, I probably wouldn't use that as the basis for your application.
I see. Yep. That makes sense. So once I've applied, within 2 months, I'm going to know whether I've got it or not. Let's talk about the size of the total grant pool and what the average grant award has been, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, the past few years, Congress has awarded this program $20 million a year, and that's
Okay.
spread around the country. The agency usually gives around 30 awards, so the average is about 700,000 per grant, and that's with a match level of about the match level in the law is required to be 25%. So if you've got $1 million project and you apply for a $750,000 grant, then you've got to put up the other 250,000 and pledge it.
So you got to be able to fund at least 25% of whatever you're requesting.
That's right, and the agency usually tells you that the winners tend to go higher than that.
I see.
The match level is it's a secondary factor in the award decisions, but they will tell you that between 30 and 40% is more the norm for those projects in the middle range and the higher range. I think I've seen grants awarded out of a $20 million pot that are as high as, say, 1.5, 1.6 million. And even then, I think those tended to have at least a 50% match level.
I see. So it's still somewhere in the approximately 700,000 that the grant is funding.
Yes. Yeah. That's.
Yeah. Well, that's very helpful.
I mean, you never know. In 1 year, Congress funded $100 million to this program as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. There was talk about a similar large, funding investment in the program this year, and that was cut back due to the discussions on the, I think they called the Build Back Better bill.
Right. Okay.
But the lower that number gets, I mean, we're already out, but there's definitely support on the Hill for continuing to fund this program, no matter what bill it's in.
At the probably something that looks more along the lines of the previous numbers of 20 million or thereabouts.
Yeah, there's very good support across the board for funding this program for 20 million. This is the first year we've ever had the president propose money in the budget for this program. We've both the Senate, the House, Republicans, Democrats support the program. So it's been, we've enjoyed that success for funding.
Oh, that's great. Well, why don't you tell us in closing, Dave, a little bit about the Small Shipyard Coalition and how it may benefit some of our listeners and what the advocacy it's doing.
Happy to. Well, yeah, I helped put this together at an early, a number of years ago after Congress had cut funding for the Small Shipyard Grant Program for 2 years in a row. And I had a conversation with some of the staff and said, hey, what happened here? And they said, well, nobody asked for the money, so we cut it. And so we formed this coalition and started working with some champions in Congress that were willing to stand up for it and say, yeah, this is something that, our small shipyards continue to need. And that first year they said, all right, we'll give you $5 million just to see if anybody still cares about it. And I believe there was something like $80 million worth of applications received.
Oh, wow. So
there's definitely a lot of continued demand. And I see, I think about at least 100 million a year, maybe more.
I see.
Demand for it. I think there are always going to be projects at shipyards where you have, gosh, this would be nice to have, and here's what we could do with that, and how we could better serve our customers, or that's really what the goal of the program is.
Oh, that's good. And like I mentioned at the beginning, Blast One builds blasting and painting facilities. We can handle everything from what we call full EPC, so engineer, procure, and construct, whether that be construction, whether that be equipment supply, but certainly end-to-end design, build, and then maintenance of the solutions. And we'd love to hear from you, either myself or Dave or any of our respective teams. If you just have some questions about whether you think you'd be eligible for the grant, want to learn more about it, discuss any upcoming projects that you have, and see whether there's something that may be of benefit to you. So Dave, I want to say thank you very much for spending some time with us today. Great to see you again. And we'll make sure that we include our contact information as well as links to our company's websites in the space below. Do you have anything you want to finish off, Dave?
No. Thank you, Brian. I will tell you that these, again, start early. If you think that your company might be eligible, your project might be eligible, reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you about it. And having that right equipment partner can be helpful too, because Blast One understands what their equipment can do and how it will help you in your operation. And that kind of analysis is really useful when it comes to actually putting the grant application together. So you don't always see that kind of support, but definitely appreciate it.
Good. Well, thank you very much again, Dave. Great to see you, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
You bet. Thanks now.
Goodbye.